Hello, Shauna, and thank you so much for joining me on Age Better.
Thank you. So happy to be here, Barbara.
So, tell us a little bit about this tool, this company that you started, Tendercare. For people who may not be familiar with it, what is it?
Tendercare is your trusted app for smart aging care at every life stage for the entire family. So it's an AI layer that filters, organizes, helps a family action on everything you need to manage elder care in one single powerful app.
I really wish that I had such an app, such a tool when my mother was going through her spiraling downward after she
Oh.
fell and broke her hip and really started to develop dementia as well. And it would have been a great help to all of us. But okay, I'm happy that this is something that will be helping many, many, many other people. So tell us about how and why you decided to create this company, this product, this tool. You have a backstory. There's a reason. What is your own personal experience? Can you tell us?
I'm happy to share.
Hmm.
This comes from a very personal, very real place. It starts with my relationship with my father, Mike. About 13 years ago, he was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's, living in California while I was working in tech in New York City. I was immediately introduced into the world of what it means to be a family caregiver for my dad. We are incredibly close. I was highly motivated. I don't come from a healthcare background, but I came from a place of wanting to do the best for my dad and
Hmm.
not knowing what steps or tools I needed to be able to be there for him. And found I started to make a lot of really big mistakes, what felt like mistakes that could have been avoided if I had just simply had the right steps in front of me, the right education, the right knowledge of which services to use or what legal documents I needed to complete on behalf of my dad. A number of these really started to pile up. I missed paper mail because I don't live with my dad at his residence, and we missed his healthcare insurance renewal. So this was a huge deal of trying to get him covered again. I hadn't been keeping an eye on his ATM withdrawals, and my dad started to go to the ATM and max out his withdrawals. I didn't catch that for like 3 weeks. So very expensive on the other side to realize, man, if I'd put some of these checks and balances in place early enough, I could have better protected my dad. And they
Right.
were really simple to do if you just knew the right things to do at the right time. So this really started the fire in me, which was, okay, I come from technology. What role could technology play in helping families like mine feel more empowered, prepared for what's to come? And also, how can we start to build a body of information and documents that you're going to be asked for over and over again on this journey in one place on the go, as opposed to in my filing cabinet or my binder in my car? This could be so much easier. I was really called at that point to leave my career in big tech and come and help make this a little easier. To your point, Barbara, if we weren't able to experience this and get the benefit of this, certainly help the 54 million other families who are actively engaged in this or just starting this journey today.
Yeah, there are so many. We'll get to some of that. Now, people hear the word that you just said, AI. I mean, I think AI is miraculous on so many levels. I'm sure we can all agree. And that there are many of us who are concerned, of course, about how far will AI go? Will it take over our lives in a bad way, not necessarily in a good way? So anyway, there are a lot of questions still out there about AI. But AI is actually kind of the backbone of your tool. So tell us a little bit more about that. How is AI being used, embraced for this?
I'm happy to. We like to think about AI less as the sort of Porsche in the driveway and more as the minivan for the family. This is really the hard charging, sturdy backbone of a lot of the services that we're offering families that are very pragmatic, very practical. A great example of this, we integrate with Medicare. And so we ingest all of the most important information on previous doctors, prescriptions, emergency room visits. This is really important data. We use things like AI to immediately match based off of databases that are already used by healthcare professionals around contraindications, for instance, for medications, to quickly service an alert or a warning to a family of like, hey, looks like mom or dad or grandma might be taking two medications that you want to go and talk to your doctor about the next time that she's in, and just double check that this is the right intention by prescribing these two medications that have come from two different doctors, for instance, that may or may not be talking to each other. These are the
Hmm.
types of things that AI can do really quickly and effectively that we're really excited about. Another, I actually have one here, is something that we call the magic magnet. So again, not AI, this part, which is really just a QR code that a family can work together to put all of the most important information for mom or for dad or for grandma in the event of an emergency. Emergency medical services are trained to look on a refrigerator for this information, and it's really vital to delivering great care when you really need it. What's great is that we have made it super easy for a family to update this in real time, work together on this, and then most importantly, if this is scanned, have everyone in the family be alerted to this with a number of different next steps or connections that AI can deliver up as a result of seeing that, hey, mom's emergency magnet was now scanned. So very, very practical, simple ways that we're using AI that we have been able to put a lot of time and care into making sure we're using in the safest possible manner. We're one of the only companies that are out there that have a special zero data policy with OpenAI, which means that all of the data that we collect and that we use in order to help families inside of our platform stays inside of our platform. There's no data sharing, it's bank level security. So we really think very, very deeply and thoughtfully about where we want to use AI and then how do we make it really safe.
About the data sharing, is that an option though? Like, what if you do want to share the data, or
Yeah.
is that just not an option
No,
to keep
absolutely.
it really safe?
This is our family's data. So what they want to do with it, we want to empower them to be able to do. And what we
Got
often
it.
find is a family really wants to gather this at key moments, like preparing for a doctor's visit. What's happened over the last 6 months? How do we make this much easier to be able to share? One of the features that we have inside of the platform is actually a download button for all of the most important questions, notes, and key information you want to share with your doctor before you go in and have the
Yeah,
conversation.
that's a great idea. When I think back just a few years ago that I was experiencing life as a caregiver as well as the rest of my life, and I just remember everything was written down on a, yellow legal pad, and I would
Oh,
bring in
yeah.
the yellow legal pad with me to all of the doctor appointments, and this just sounds like such a better idea on
Well, and
every
you know,
level.
I have many of the yellow legal pads myself, Barbara, and one of the really easy things that we do is we actually can allow anyone to take a picture of hand scribbled notes. We all use them. We all have post-it notes, hand scribbled notes. We immediately are able to recognize what the text is and then pull that into your file. So you can now have that. It's shareable and you don't need to be married to that yellow legal pad anymore.
That's really wonderful. And this sounds like a great tool, not only if you are maybe a long distance or mid distance caregiver, as I was. I was constantly flying back and forth between New York and Virginia, where my mother lived for 22 years. And, but it just sounds like it could be really useful for someone in that situation, as well as someone who's could be right next door, right?
Yep, I'm 3,000 miles away from my dad. I'm actively his primary caregiver today, and we have built Tendercare with that population in mind. We know so
Yeah.
many families are living farther and farther away from each other. Sometimes it could just be because you're at the office and you're working. It could be because you live in another town, and we want to make it much easier to have a level of presence and to also be able to step in when you need to. A few of the features we have are what I'm really excited about. Everything we test internally, our team mostly are all caregivers themselves. Oftentimes it's really simple, but you might live in a different state. You don't know what the weather is where your loved one lives. But that's really important if there's a hurricane or if there's a fire. And so we do things like allow you to actually get the weather for the person that you're taking care of, even if you're a remote caregiver. So you know, oftentimes 2 hours ahead of those who live in the area if there's a big storm coming and it might be time to check on mom or to make sure that she's got what she needs, or even in the event of it being really severe that you can actually evacuate. So these are the types of things that are really really relevant and in the moment that we try to deliver up to give a little bit more peace of mind to those who live a little farther away.
Okay. So let's talk about the market itself. So you've talked, of course, about the growing caregiving crisis in this country. I
Mhm.
mean, it is. I mean, we're getting older. The population is getting older and living longer. We know that, and that's a good thing, of course, living longer. But they're not living like the health span is not what it should be. You know, there is an increase, I believe, in Alzheimer's and cases of dementia, and it's just become it always has been an issue and it's becoming more of an issue. So help us understand how big this issue really is and why we all need to really be paying attention to this.
But yeah, I mean, it's coming for all of us. This is a new chapter in any family's now experience. We are looking at 1 in 5 Americans who will be 65 and up. Along with that comes a lot of great things and also a lot of new conditions or a lot of new experiences that require more care. As a result of that, we have 54 million family members, often like me, who are leaning in, providing somewhere between 24 to 32 hours outside of jobs, really doing sort of activities of care in a non-paid way. Most families are looking at an estimated $600 billion worth of unpaid labor. They are currently putting and applying towards this today without even any of the growing demographics that I mentioned,
Yep.
which, just to put that in perspective, is the annual global revenue for Amazon. So we're talking about
Wow.
some serious dedication and spend on the way that families are allocating their time. There's also just tremendous out-of-pocket costs that come with care. You know, when we talk specifically about Alzheimer's and dementia, you're looking at most of what is required for Alzheimer's and dementia is out of pocket for a family. This is not covered by insurance. And so you're actually looking at, when you add up the unpaid hours and the out
Yeah.
of pocket costs, somewhere to the tune of $1.2 trillion that is being devoted to this often very little discussed corner of how we think about aging and longevity and care. So it's a very big problem, but also a very big opportunity to innovate in and really start to like
That's true. No, that's
legitimately
so
improve.
true. So true. And we have seen, some innovation, but not enough. Definitely not. But we'll get to that in a few minutes. So let's talk about the caregiver person himself, herself. It can really take a personal toll on you, on your health, on your finances, on just your kind of your emotional well-being, your happiness level. It's a very challenging time in someone's life to be a caregiver, whether you're caregiving from a distance as you are and as I did, or you're right next door living in the same home. So how have you seen Tendercare, your tool, to help the caregiver to kind of combat some of those challenges?
I mean, we think about this a lot, just the
Hmm.
cognitive load that a
Yeah,
caregiver, a family caregiver is living their life with, which is not just keeping their own personal details and all of the crazy responsibilities that come with just taking care of yourself
right.
in
Just
their,
living.
mostly, yeah, either on their yellow legal pad or in their head. They're doing this oftentimes for children, and they're now doing this for parents as well. And so this is leading to all kinds of things in terms of depression, anxiety, burnout. It's no surprise, right? Where we see the biggest drivers of this, we talk to so many family caregivers every week. It's been amazing. They're actively involved. We have thousands of caregivers on our platform who are actively involved in what products we build and how we innovate, about where we can be the most useful or helpful to them. For
Hmm.
them, it's really about saving them time. So much of the work they are doing is very time intensive. These are administrative burdens, right? They're filling out the same form over and over again. They are
Yeah,
trying to remind their family
I'm having
members.
flashbacks.
Yes. And it's brutal, right? There's nothing more
It's brutal.
infuriating.
That
And
all the administrative stuff on top
yes,
of just the sheer emotional challenge of watching your beloved parent or spouse or partner, by the way. It's not just parents, who you might be
ugh,
caring for in this situation, who, just it's just horrible to see.
it's really tough.
It adds to the whole burnout. So, but
It's really
continue about how
tough.
Tendercare can help with this.
Yeah, the emotion behind this is real. And I think what it does is it creates an even more intense experience of doing some of this administrative work. I can speak from
Hmm.
experience. I had to change over my dad's utility provider, and I had to get on the phone with customer service. And the only way you can change an account is if my dad were to say my name on the phone to the customer service provider. This is when I realized my dad no longer knew my name.
I know.
And
I remember
and
reading that in your backstory,
oh,
which, I'll include all of this in the show links, show notes, everyone. Links to a documentary, links to her
oh,
backstory, Shauna's backstory. Continue.
oh, thank you.
Of course.
This is a hard moment. You think you're going
Yeah.
in to change a utility bill, and now
Yeah.
you're actually dealing with what this means that, the person, one of the people that you love the most, no longer knows who you are. And so
Hmm.
you have this interplay of incredibly deep, trying emotion, and then this to-do list that you're trying to charge through. And it makes it feel so much harder. So we are very cognizant of that and the experience that our caregivers have who are on the platform. What we try and do is meet them where they are and to have full permission to normalize a lot of the emotions, which are oftentimes frustrating. Sometimes it's angry. Sometimes it's just completely depleted. Make space and room for that. We have not only an incredible community that's on the platform, that is actively thinking about these topics every week, discussing them, but also just in terms of being able to track moods, your own mood, really understand where your own emotional levels are alongside your to-do list. And then we try and save our caregivers as much time as possible. So help them have the same form that they're searching for all the time, ready to go, that they can
Yeah.
share their durable power of attorney, take steps out of what normally takes so much time to research, which would be someone you actually trust to come into the home to be with your loved one. We really want to remove a lot of the burden of like, is this someone that has the right certifications, licensing, customer reviews? Do I feel like this is someone that is going to take as good of care of my loved one as I would? We think about this very intentionally because when we ask our families what their perfect day looks like, often it does not involve spending all of those unpaid hours on a lot of this administration. It involves actually being with their family members, taking real joy in the time that we have together to be present. And so
Yeah.
we're constantly thinking about ways that we can give that back to them.
Yeah. Oh, such a challenging time. It sounds like you have a very robust group of people going to your platform, and I'm curious, are they able to communicate with each other? Is it
Oh,
something that yes, so like a setup where they can learn from each other as well as from you?
absolutely.
Yeah, that's
One
wonderful
of
to have
the biggest
that kind of
requests we
support.
find from families is they really want to connect with one another, and also they want to impart wisdom to one
Yeah.
another. What are the things you've learned along the way you wish you knew when you first
Yeah.
started? What are the tips or the tricks that you found have really helped you in a particularly difficult thing, like taking away the keys, for instance? No one wants to do this. This is a very hard moment in time. Or having like a hard conversation with a sibling around how you delineate who takes on what tasks. These are hard topics, and so it feels much better to learn from what's worked from others. So we have a whole community in which a lot of these conversations are happening. And then we also allow for smaller communities, your own family. We call it abracalabra, but it's the idea that we're all working together as a team, right, to provide care. And so allowing for different roles and different communication amongst a family as they're often deep in the midst of a lot of this coordination, admin, to-do lists, and tasks. So both are possible on the platform.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And so learning from other people, let's learn from you. What have you learned during your personal caregiving journey
Oh,
about how to take better care of yourself? Let's leave your father and mother aside
sure.
for the moment. And how do you take care of yourself as a caregiver?
Mm.
What have you learned?
It's so tough. It's so tough.
Yeah.
So many of us, we immediately volunteer for this work because we are the type who put others ahead of our own needs. There were years when I didn't go to the dentist. My dad went to the dentist every 3 months, but I didn't go for like 5 years because that was always the last thing on the list. So it took me a while. I cannot say that I had this right out of the gate. I found that the best way to care for myself was to really create rules for myself, which are, Saturdays, I have to take some time to do something for myself, whether that's go on a walk, it could be small, it could be short, but I have to do something or plan a coffee with a friend. That is my scheduled time to really do that. And by giving myself that permission, I can relax into that as opposed to forgetting about it, which often happens to us. We're so busy with what everyone
Yes.
else needs. But because that's on the calendar, that's already become a pattern and a way of life. So creating these small moments are really important to not lose yourself, because we often, and we see this a lot on our platform, we lose our sense of identity into, the person we're caring for, into the condition that they're living with. And it's only years later when we kind of pop our head back up and realize we have not been spending a lot of time caring for ourselves in all of this.
Really?
It's
So you're saying
definitely
that
a
in some way,
battle.
kind of carve out time for yourself and make sure you stick with it. I'm a big believer in putting things in my Google Calendar because then it's
Mhm.
there and I get the alert, and I know it's just a psychological thing for me, whether
Mhm.
it's, going for that long run or going for, usually around exercise, something that we can
Exactly.
all easily let slip by. Or,
Mm.
find a reason not to go
So
because we're so
important.
busy doing everything else, including now having this added
Mm.
responsibility, which we do with love, of course, because we want
It's
to, but
hard though.
still, it can take time away from yourself. So thank you for that. So, the healthcare system is really needs a lot of work. I mean, I just think in general it needs a lot of work. But in this case, it's almost like it's not ready for this, what many people call the silver tsunami, right?
Mhm.
That has been coming. It's not going to, it's been coming, and it's just going to keep coming in these great big waves that get bigger and bigger, quite frankly. And so, what would you do if you could, like, magic wand question, like, poof, change the healthcare system in this country to better accommodate this
Mhm.
growing wave of
Mhm.
elderly people living longer with needs that
Mhm.
and need care. So how would you do that?
First, I think we come from a place where we immediately jump to this patient model where you hit a certain life stage and you immediately become a patient, which I think already sets you down a track of managed care that I'm not sure actually answers the whole question or the whole experience that a family is currently living through today, which is actually that we're talking, and Barbara, you do such a great job of this, like talking about a real life stage that is relatively new in American society. We're living longer. We have more time now on the other side of retirement to really think through where we want to live, who we want to live close to in our family, what services do we want. We know 77% of those who are over 65 want to live at home. They do
Yeah.
not want to move prematurely into, independent living or assisted living. And so I think what we are seeing is a real need springing up for more services catered towards this life stage, really thinking about it holistically, not just,
Holistically, that's the
yeah,
key
not just
word.
a patient, but really thinking about the full family. Who is part of this? What are the wishes of those who are now entering into this life stage? How do you better equip that individual with relationship support, emotional support, but also physical and safety support in their own home? And that leads to a whole cascade of different infrastructure requirements, different service providers that we need to be available and have capacity to be able to meet a lot of our population where they want to be met right now. You hear a lot of conversation about this idea of aging in place. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, for some of us, that's a no-brainer. Many industries, the healthcare system included, are starting to make inroads into, but we have a long way to go, I think, to really be able to offer a family and an individual like a really truly holistic experience of what that looks like to age in place.
Yes, and thank you for that. I totally agree,
Oh,
and I remain hopeful, but we have a long way to go.
it's
So
coming.
where do
It's
you
coming. We're
see
working on it.
you're working on it, and you're in it. You're right in it. So, and I appreciate the work that you are doing to kind of keep this moving in the right direction. So, speaking of moving in the right direction, what about Tendercare? Where do you see this going? I mean, you have this product. I guess it will continue to evolve based on the needs that pop up.
Mhm.
Like, you may go, oh wow, someone just said they needed blah blah blah. We didn't think of that. That's a great
Sure.
idea. Let's start to incorporate that into our platform. But I'm sure you've got some other ideas as well. Is there
Mhm.
anything you can share with us about, as what
Sure.
you see the future? of
Sure. No, there's
Tendercare?
so much I'm excited about in this. We get so much energy back and infused into our team when we hear feedback from those who are on the platform. And it gives us so much in terms of what people are really asking for very clearly, in where we should start to build. But I think the two areas that I'm most excited about, we are living through a moment in which technology and the capabilities of the technology we have available to us, whether it's AI or otherwise, has really blown open the doors on thinking through new ways, new, easier ways to solve problems. So, when we think about how painful it is right now to, fill out forms and get a power of attorney added to all of the financial institutions that, a family member might bank at, there is a future, it is almost here, in which you can very easily work together on a platform like Tendercare to not only fill out all of the documents you may or may not know you need ahead of time, but then actually have the platform go ahead and integrate and start talking to all of those institutions and make sure those connections are already set. You have none of the waiting in line, going down to a local branch. This is all done in the background on your behalf. And then you're just given the alert that you're all set and here's your access to everything. And here are our next steps that we would recommend as a family you work through to continue your care journey. So just an incredible amount of effort and time and energy that we're able to remove from a family as a result of a lot of the latest breakthroughs in agentic architecture and AI. This is all coming and very exciting. On the other side, for businesses, providers, these are some of these businesses are just incredible local heroes. These are senior move managers or real estate brokers who specifically understand how to work with, families and individuals who are making their last move or are
Yes.
downsizing or need a safer place, right? To be able to age in place, being able to create even more tools for them to be of service and help for families as they're working through this. This is all coming on the platform for Tendercare, and it's coming nationally. So we started in New York, but really starting to offer so many of these services. We're hearing the demand coming from across the country, really going deeply into each market and making sure that families are empowered, but also all of the businesses and the services that are helping those families are empowered as well.
Oh, that's really wonderful. And it's a great vision. And I am wishing you all the luck to kind
Oh,
of,
thank you.
see this all to fruition and much, much more. Before we wind down this conversation, Shauna, just I always like to ask my guests this. Can you please share what your top three takeaways are from this conversation today?
I think the first is that we all recognize that healthcare has a long way to go to meet so many of us where we already know we need change. So that would be the first. The second is that care is something that should not just be thought through for those who might more obviously need it, but those who are delivering care and really stepping in to support. And that's just as important on
Yeah.
the other side, because the care for those that, we want to make sure are safe is not possible without some of that self-care. And the third, I think we are entering a new chapter in which technology like AI is incredibly powerful, but must be safe. And it must be used in service of the real problems and the real needs of what we're currently experiencing, as opposed to the other way around.
Yeah, really, three great tips. And I'm very excited about this because it's very needed, number one. And number two, as I said earlier, I'm really very enthusiastic about the potential of AI. I mean, it's already shown its potential, obviously. And there's a lot more I think that we can harness from the power of AI for the better good, as you are doing. So thank you for all that you're doing on behalf of millions and millions of caregivers around not just this country, but around the world. I mean, hopefully, this platform will be able to, it's not global yet, right? But hopefully it'll be able to expand outside of the
Absolutely.
US. I'm
We're
sure
not
that's
the
your,
only ones who need the help. So
that's right.
I would love for our impact to not just reach millions, but billions. That would be
Billions.
fantastic.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And best of luck. And by the way, everyone, there will, as I said, be links to all of this information about Tendercare, about Shauna and her background. A wonderful documentary I really would like you to see. Very inspiring. And the links will be there in the show notes. So please take a look. And thank you so much. I'll be back next week. Talk to you soon.